So we're at the two dots on Daf Kuf Kaf Ches Amud Aleph, and what we're going to be seeing today, very briefly, is a series of Piskei Halacha that are offered by Rabbi Abba, ostensibly to his student Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama. And he sends him different Piskei Halacha, and that's really the link that connects all of the halachas that we're about to see. Sholach le Rabbi Abba Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama, halacha goivin min ha'avodim. The halacha is that if a creditor wishes to collect from the estate of orphans, meaning the debtor is deceased and now all that's left are the orphans in control of the estate, normally we only allow a creditor to collect from real estate from Yisomim. We don't allow him to collect from chattel, from metaltalin. However, since avodim, since slaves are scripturally connected to real estate, a creditor can collect this for his debt, can collect the slaves as payment for debt. The Rav Nachman Omar ein goyim. And Rav Nachman disagrees, and he says, no, slaves are different. And now the Rashbam explains, even though normally in other halachos, let's say method of kinyan, and other relevant halachos, we do connect real estate to slaves. However, over here, what's the reason why we only allow a creditor to collect from real estate? Because that's where his primary reliance is upon. A person relies on real estate for collection of debt. Why? Because he knows it's not going anywhere. It's there and it's not movable and it's not destroyable in most cases. And therefore, he has a sense of reliance. And therefore, in order to limit his accessibility to the estate of the orphans, we only allow him to collect from real estate. That svara is not true for avodim. Avodim are movable. They're on the run. They can flee. And therefore, that sense of reliance does not exist for slaves. Now, Sholach le Rabbi Abba Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama. Now, the next psak halacha. Halacha shlishi b'sheni kosher. The halacha is that even though normally relatives are not kosher witnesses to testify in court cases about their relatives, but there can be a certain amount of relation as long as it is sufficiently distant, and as long as it is sufficiently distant, a person can be a witness for a cousin. How distant must it be? So Rabbi Amma says, a shlishi to a sheni. Now what do we mean a third to a second? What we mean is like this. Imagine Reuven and Shimon are brothers. They are generation number one. They have two sons. Each one of them has a son. That's generation number two. Reuven's son then has his own son. That's generation number three. That's what the connection between Reuven's grandson and Shimon's son, in English we would call that first cousins once removed, right? So if you have that level of distance in relationship, then one can testify on behalf of the other. One can act as an aid for another. Rava Amar Af Berisha. Rava says, I'll go even further, and I'll say that the grandson of Reuven can even testify for Shimon, his great uncle. That also is a legal relationship.
1 to 3.
It's from 3 to 1. Yeah, right. So, and Marbar Avashi Achsher Ba'aba Da'aba. Now, Marbar Avashi went even really far, and he said that a grandson, since he's 2 generations removed, could testify for his own grandfather. But Veles Hilchasa Kamar Baravashi, we clearly do not paskin that way, like the Rashbam says, B'nei Banim Harehein Kibanim, that grandchildren are like children, Ad Sof Kol Hadoros, for all generations. In other words, no matter how far the descendants go, if I can trace my lineage back to a Zayda, I can't testify for him. Sholach le Rabbi Abba Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama, Haya Yodea lo be'idus karka, Ad shelo nistame v'nistame pasel. Next psak from Rabbi Abba to his Talmud is that if a person knows testimony on a piece of real estate, let's say there's a land dispute. I say that the border goes over here, you say the border goes until here. So I need a witness. I have one witness, but now I need a second witness. Second witness comes forward and says, yeah, I'll testify that your land goes up to this borderline, but by the time he gets to court, he goes blind. So comes along Rabbi Abba and says he can no longer act as a witness because currently he's blind and therefore cannot describe the border unless it's from memory whereas we need him to be able to point to the border right now and say, here's where the border is. Shmuel Amar Kasher Efshir de Mechabein Matzarna Aval Glimalo. Shmuel disagrees. And Shmuel says, even though currently he's blind, he can testify from memory and provide proper landmarks as to where the borders are. Right, went up to this tree. But what he's not believed is for testifying on a garment. To say that I'm testifying that that garment belongs to him, there aren't sufficient distinguishing markings on the garment for someone who's currently blind to be able to testify. The Rav Sheshus Omer Afilu Glima Efshir de Machabin Midas Arko Midas Rachla. Rav Sheshus disagrees with that. He says a blind person can testify from memory on a garment and say these were its dimensions. It was this long, it was this wide, and so forth. Aval Naska Lo. But what he holds that a blind person cannot testify is about a bar of, let's say, precious metal, a bar of silver, a bar of gold. Since it's so nondescript, a blind person, unless he's able to look at it and say, I recognize this as Yankel's bar, he can't testify. And Rav Papa disagrees with that, and he says, no, a blind person can testify. He just put it in his hand, and he says, I remember exactly how much it weighed, and this was the weight. It weighed X number of grams, right, or whatever it is. So now we're going to challenge all of those opinions. The last three opinions said that for certain things, a blind person's testimony is valid. So the Bryson now lists a number of cases where originally when a person witnessed something, he was kosher to act as a witness, but his status changed. So here's the first example. I saw something that could act as testimony for Plony, but then I married Plony's daughter and I became his son-in-law. Okay? So I'm no longer kosher to be a witness for him. Pikeach v'nischaresh, or if a person was communicative, he was able to communicate, and then all of a sudden through some illness or whatever trauma, he can no longer communicate, he becomes deaf-mute. Or piteach v'nistame, or he was sighted and then went blind, or shafoy v'nishtateh, or he was lucid and then became insane. In all of those cases, pasul, he can no longer act as a witness. But aval hayodeyalo be'edus, ad shelo naseh chasano benaseh chasano umeisa bito, pikeach v'nischaresh chazer v'nispakeach, piteach v'nistame v'chazer v'nispateach, shafoy v'nishtateh v'chazer v'nishtafe, kosher. But the Brisa says that's only true if at the time that he's called to testify, he is not able to act as a witness. But what happens if at the time when he saw the event, he was kosher, and temporarily he became precluded from acting as a witness? So in the first case, he became the son-in-law, but then his wife died, so he's no longer the son-in-law, so that by the time he gets to court, he's no longer related to the guy. So in that case, he could be called as a witness. Same thing with all of the disabilities. If let's say when he was lucid, he saw the event, then went temporarily insane, and then recovered from his insanity by the time he gets to court, he's kosher. If he was sighted and then went temporarily blind, and then regained his sight by the time he's ready to testify, in all of those cases, it's kosher. So Zeh HaKlal, the Brisa concludes by saying that the general rule is Kol shetchilasa osofa b'paslus, pasal tchilasa b'sofa b'kashrus kosher. That as long as, he says, if at the time of testimony he's not kosher, so then he can't testify. But if at the time when he saw the event, and at the time he's ready to testify, he is a capable witness, even if in the interim he temporarily lost that capability, he's still kosher to act as a witness. The Gemara says, Tiyufta dekulhu, Tiyufta. Is this a refutation of all of the Amoraim who held that a blind person's testimony will sometimes help? Yes, it's a refutation. Because you see clearly from the Brisa that if you're blind at the moment that you're called to testify, your testimony is invalid. Okay. Sholach Rabbi Abba Rav Yosef Bar Chama. Next psak of Rabbi Abba is Ha'omer al tinok bein habanim nema. If a man says that this small child has a certain status, he is believed. Now that's a very ambiguous, vague statement. What does it mean? We'll see in just a moment. Rabbi Yochanan Omar Einonim, and Rabbi Yochanan says he's not believed. So frek the Gemara, my Ka'amar. What does this mean? What are they? What's the machlokas? So Omer Abaye Hachi Ka'amar. It means as follows: HaOmer Altino Bein Habonim Yirash Kol Nechasai Ne'eman Kereb Yochanan ben Baroka Reb Yochanan Omar Eino Ne'eman Kerabanan. In 2 days daf on daf Kuf Lamed, we're going to see a Mishnah. The Mishnah says that if a man has heirs, he has sons, but he says, instead of my sons inheriting, I want all of my inheritance to go to Yankel, to Plum. So the halacha is, you cannot displace your heirs and say that your heir is someone who's totally not related to you. But here's the question that there's a machlokus now in the Mishnah. What happens if a person has 5 sons, and he says, instead of 5 sons inheriting, I only want son Ploni to inherit. He will be the sole heir. So that is a machlokus between Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka and the Chachamim. The Chachamim say it doesn't work. You cannot create a redistribution and exclude certain heirs and give everything to one heir. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka says you can. And so therefore this is the machlokus between Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Abba says if you want to choose one son to be your sole heir, you can. And Rabbi Yochanan says, like the Chachamim, that you cannot. So the Gemara now says, is that the pshat? Maskif lo rava, hai neman ve'eno neman, yirash below yirash mi boile. He says, but the language is off according to the way you're interpreting it, Abaya. It's not a question of believability. Remember, Rabbi Abba's statement is, do you believe a man to say the status of a child? Mm-hmm. It's not a question of believing, it's a question of whether he has the legal ability to take away inheritance from his 4 sons to give it exclusively to one sole heir. The language is totally off according to the way you're explaining it. So Ella Amar Rava Hachi Ka'amar. So Rava says really what the machlokus between Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Yochanan is as follows. HaOmer al Tinok ben Abonim Bechorhu Neman Kerebbi Yehuda Rabbi Yochanan Amar Eino Neman Kerabanan. The machlokus that we saw yesterday having to do with a Bechor. Remember we learned yesterday there's a machlokus between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim in the following case. In our little shtetl, in the Schwartz family, everyone knows that Ruvain is known as the Bechor in the Schwartz family. All of a sudden, the father comes along and he says, I got news for you guys. It's not Ruvain who's the Bechor, Shimon is the Bechor, not Ruvain. So the question is, in the face of a chazaka, since there's a chazaka already, the community has always assumed that Ruvain is the Bechor, does a father have ne'emanus? Does he have believability to declare another child the Bechor instead, who's entitled to a double portion? Reb Yehuda says a father is able to do that, and the Chachamim say that he's not able in the face of a chazaka. So this is the machlokus between Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Abba says, I paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, that a father is believed when he says that Shimon is the Bechor and not Ruvain. And Rabbi Yochanan says, no, I paskin like the Chachamim who say that a father is not believed. Next. Shalach le Rabbi Abla Rav Yosef Bar Chama. HaOmer titol ishti ke'echad min habonim noteles ke'echad min habonim. Next psak of Rabbi Abba. If a man says, let's say a man says, I have 3 sons, and normally my estate would be divided into 3 equal portions. Okay? But I would like my wife to get the same portion as my heirs. And I'm giving it to her as a matana, and I'm making a kinyan now. So therefore, instead of dividing my estate when I die into 3 equal portions, divide it into 4 equal portions so that my wife gets 1 chelek, and the sons divide up the rest of the 75% of the estate. So that is legal, says Rabbi Abba, because the man is basically making a kinyan now to give a matana of his estate. But Omar Rava uvenachasim shel achshav uvevanim haboim la'achar mikan. But Rava says you have to qualify this. The first qualification is that that's only based upon what the current estate is worth at the time when he makes the gift. Because we know that ein adam makna davar shelo ba la'olam. According to the Chachamim, I can't gift something that I don't currently own, like we learned yesterday, right? So therefore, if let's say I acquire additional assets in my estate after I make this gift declaration, my wife will not get a portion of that. She'll only get 1/4 of what my current estate is worth. So that's statement number 1. And by the way, Rashbam says this is true even according to Rebbe Meir, who says that a person can be makna davar shelo bo la'olam, because even Rabbi Meir will agree that you have to state that explicitly, that you want someone to acquire something that you don't yet currently own. But if you didn't state it explicitly, then there's an assumption that you only want the gift to cover that which is currently within your estate. But then the next thing that Rabbi says almost sounds like it almost contradicts it. He says, "Uvevanim haboim la'achar mikan." When a man says, "I want my wife to get an equal portion to my heirs," he means based upon the number of heirs that I have at the time of my death. So that could go either up or it could go down. Let's say a guy has 3 sons at the time when he makes his declaration of a gift to his wife. I want her to get an equal portion with all of my sons. Well, I may have 2 other sons or 3 other sons or 4 other sons by the time I die. So therefore, based upon how many sons are alive at the time of my death, will determine what percentage my wife gets of my current estate.
Mm-hmm. That's when the allocation is done.
Because that's when the allocation, so it's ironic, because basically you're saying, base the allocation based on the current value of the estate, but as far as the percentage of the allocation will depend upon how many sons are around at the time of my death. Now, it could be he'll have more sons. It could be that 1 or 2 of his sons will die, in which case she'll get a larger percentage. So you have to work out. It's not really a stira, but you're just basically making it umda. You're assuming what the import of this person's statement is. He wants his wife to get an equal percentage, but he can only give her an equal percentage of what the current estate is worth, not what the future estate is going to be worth. Weiter. Sholach le Rabbi Abba le Rav Yosef bar Chama, Hamotzi shtar chov al chaveiro, mal va'omer lo nifrati klum, v'lo va'omer parati mechza, v'ha'idem eidem shepora kula. Here's an interesting case. This is really a Bava Basra case. It doesn't belong here, but it's all part of the Piskei Halacha of Rabbi Abba to his Talmud Rav Yosef bar Chama. And the psak is like this. The creditor produces a promissory note, and he says, here, he shows this to the debtor, he says, you owe me 100. The debtor says, I already paid you 50. I only owe you 50. What do we call that? Moida b'mikzas. Normally, a moida b'mikzas, what does he have to do?
Swear.
He has to take a shavua, and he gives the other 50, but he has to take a shavua that he doesn't owe the other 50, because we suspect that maybe he's lying and he's too embarrassed to deny it all, and that's why we make him swear that he only owes 50. Now, that's when there is no shtar. But here, there's a shtar. So why don't we make the lova pay the whole amount? Because the shtar shows clearly that he owes 100. The answer is because after he said, I only owe you 50, witnesses came along and said that he paid all of it. He paid all 100. So the shtar says he owes a full 100. He says he owes 50, and the Edom say he owes 0. So what do you do in such a case? So comes along Rabbi Abba and he says, Areza nishba v'goyve mechzim minachasim b'nei chorim avomim mishubadim lo, da amri anana Edom samchina. So what's that creaking? I don't know. So it sounds like we're on a ship. Right?
As long as I'm not sinking.
Right. Anyway, so the halacha is like this: he has to pay the 50. He takes the shvua that he doesn't owe the other 50, and then there's one other little knech. The creditor can only collect from unencumbered property, meaning property that has not yet been committed to somebody else. But if the only property is stuff that he's already sold to another person, the debtor has sold to another person, the creditor cannot take that. Normally a creditor can say, my debt predates your sale, so therefore I can extract it from encumbered property. But here the reason why he can't is because the buyer, let's say, the guy who bought the property from the debtor, can say, how it's not fair that you should take this property away from me. The reaon why I bought it from the debtor is because when I did a title search, I knew that there were witnesses who said that he was in the clear and that he didn't owe any money to anybody. Right? And that's the reason why I bought it. So it's not fair that I should have to suffer because there are witnesses that I was relying upon. These witnesses who said that he paid all his debts. That's why I bought the property from him. So therefore the malva can only collect from unencumbered property, not from property that has already been sold off. Vafilu Rabbi Akiva, the Amar Meishav Aveda Havi, Hani mili heicha deleka edim, aval heicha dika edim, irsuse irsas. And now the Gemara brings an interesting machlokes that we saw at the very beginning of Bava Basra. What was the case over there? The case over there is a guy, the creditor produces a shtar that says, Reuven is the creditor, he says, the shtar says that Shimon the debtor owes me sloim, or owes me shekels. It doesn't say how many shekels, it just says that Shimon owes me shekels. Now, if you have no number listed and it just says shekels in the plural, what's the implication? 2 shekels. So he shows the shtar to Shimon and he says, I remember I lent you 5 shekels, pay up. And Shimon says, what are you talking about? The loan was only for 3 shekels. He doesn't say 2. He says it was for 3 shekels. So here's where you have it. Now the question is he a moda b'miktsas or not? That to the point where he would have to take a shvuah. On the one hand, he's denying part of the claim and he's admitting part of the claim, so he's a moda b'miktsas. You should have to take a shvuah. But Rabbi Akiva says no. Rabbi Akiva says the guy's a tzaddik. What does the shtar say? The shtar says 2. I mean, it implies 2. I'm like a Meshav Aveda. I'm like returning a lost object to you. I'm being a tzaddik and volunteering information that there's no indication that I ever owed it. And therefore, Rabbi Akiva says, let him pay the 3, because his own admission obliges him to pay 3, because Hodas Baldin K'meya Eidim, his admission is more powerful than any testimony. But at the same time, he doesn't have to take a shvuah because he's a tzaddik by volunteering this information. Because the shtar, if anything, goes against the claim of the credit. So, but that's only true that you don't have to take a shvuah according to Rabbi Akiva in that situation where there are no witnesses. All you have is the shtar. But here, it could be that the reason why the debtor said, I owe you 50, is because he heard that there were witnesses, and he didn't know what the witnesses were going to testify. Meaning, the way it works is over here is, we still suspect that when Shimon claims that he already paid 50 and he only owes 50, maybe really he owes the full amount, and he got scared. He got scared because he heard witnesses were coming, and therefore he had too much shame to brazenly deny the whole claim. And he said, I'll admit to 50, and when I get the other 50, or when the witnesses come, so then they'll push me against the wall, and I'll have to pay the other 50. Maybe that's what his psychology was. Little did he realize that the witnesses were actually going to come to his aid and testify that he owed nothing, that he paid everything. And that could be the reason why, that over here, even Rabbi Akiva would agree that you still have to take a shavua over here. But so Maskif Lomar Baravashi, and he says, Adarabba, Afilu le Reb Shimon ben Elazar domer moda mixas atayna havi, hani mili heicha deleka edim de komisayile, aval heicha di edim de komisayile vade meshiv aveda havi. And so Mar Baravashi says just the opposite. In the Gemara in Bava Basra, Reb Shimon ben Elazar disagrees with Rabbi Akiva, and he says that in that case of the shtar that says shekels, the debtor has to take a shvuah because he's a moda b'miktsas. But Reb Shimon ben Elazar would agree that here you don't have to take a shvuah. I disagree with Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Abba says the guy who admitted 50 has to take a shvuah. I hold he shouldn't have to take a shvuah, and that would be according to everybody. Even Reb Shimon ben Elazar, who says in that case of shekels, the guy has to take a shvuah. You know why? Because here there are witnesses who says that he owes 0. So by him volunteering that he owes 50, he's a tzaddik. So therefore, there's clearly witnesses on his side that clearly support the fact that he owes nothing. The fact that he volunteered 50 is a reason for him to be mamish pater, even according to Reb Shimon ben Elazar. So therefore, you have a machlokas in this last case between Rabbi Abba and Mar Baravashi, that Rabbi Abba says that even though there are witnesses that support him, he nevertheless has to take a shavua, because he's still a moida b'miktsas. Maybe he didn't realize what they were coming for. And you have the other opinion, Mar Baravashi, who says that you don't have to take a shvu in this case. Now, let's get to the final analysis. Dorish Mar Zutra Mishmei Rav Shimi Bar Ashi Hilchas B'chol Hani Shmaitza Kedesholach Le Rabbi Abba Le Rav Yosef Bar Chama. So we've had a series of several piskei halacha that Rabbi Abba sent to his Talmud, Rabbi Yosef. And in all of these shailas, we paskin like the way Rabbi Abba paskin. So Amarle Ravina le Rav Ashi de Rav Nachman Mai. Wait a minute, how can you say that? The very first psak that we saw is where Rabbi Abba is disagreed upon by Rav Nachman, and we normally always paskin like Rav Nachman in Dinei Maminis. What was the very first case that we saw? Can a creditor extract avodim from the estate of Yisomim? So Rabbi Abba said yes, and Rav Nachman said no. How can you tell me that we paskin like Rabbi Abba in opposition to Rav Nachman when we always paskin like Rav Nachman in Dinei Maminis? So he said to him, so Amar Le Ravina Le Ravashi, so to Rav Nachman, what are you going to do about Rav Nachman? So Amar Le, Ein Gobin Masninan Lavich Ein Amar. He says, that's because my version of the story of Reb Abba's psak over there is that Rabbi Abba also said you cannot collect avodim from the estate of Yisomim, from the estate of orphans, and Rav Nachman agreed to that. So my version of the discussion is not that Rabbi Abba disagrees with Rav Nachman, but rather they are both on the same side, and they hold that you cannot collect avodim from Yisomim. So that's not a problem. So then the question that I have for you, Mar Zutra, is what was the significance of you saying that in all of these cases we paskin like Rabbi Abba? Like, what's the chiddush over there? Ila afuke midarava mosifu. Maybe you'll come to tell me that he was coming to tell us the chiddush that Rabbi Abba had said that a first cousin once removed, a shlishi to a sheni can testify. And Rava added on to that, and he said, even a shlishi to a rishon, a grandson for his, the third generation can testify for his great uncle. Is that what you're coming to tell me? That we only paskin like Rabbi Abba for a shlishi to a sheni, but not from a shlishi to a rishon, like Rava said? He says that doesn't make sense. How do you know that Marba Ravashi even disagrees with Rava? All we know is that maybe a shaila was brought to Marba Ravashi of first cousins once removed, and he said that's kosher. And Rava might have just been adding on to saying that Rabbi Abba would agree even in this case, a shlishi to a rishon. You don't know. Rava is coming to add on. He's not coming necessarily to disagree with Marba Ravashi. So how can you tell me that we paskin like Rabbi Abba to the exclusion of Rava? That doesn't make sense. And I de Marba Ravashi, les hilchasa Marba Ravashi. If you're coming to tell me that we paskin only like Rabbi Abba to the exclusion of Marba Ravashi, who said that a grandson can testify for his grandfather, well, we already established that we've totally rejected that, so we don't need you, Mar Zutra, to tell me that. And Ila Fukim in the Shmuel v'Rav Sheshus v'Rav Papa Yitosvu. And if you're going to tell me that it has to do with Rabbi Abba's psak regarding a blind person's testimony, because Rabbi Abba said that a blind person can never testify, and we had 3 Amoraim that said under limited conditions a blind person could testify. Well, Shkoyach, we already know that because we have a brisa that already upgeschlugged and refuted them, right? So we don't need you, Mar Zutra, to tell me that we paskin like Rabbi Abba. So Ella, so it must be la afuke mid Rabbi Yochanan or me atkafta de Marba Ravashi. There are 2 reasons why we need Mar Zutra's statement to tell me that we paskin like Rabbi Abba. One is where Rabbi Abba disagreed with Rabbi Yochanan, and what was the case over there? That was the case of the machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim as to whether a father is believed to say Shimon is the Bechor and not Ruvain in the face of a chazaka, and comes along Mar Zutra to say we paskin like Rabbi Abba, who says that a father is believed, and not like Rabbi Yochanan, who says that a father is not believed. So that's why we needed Mar Zutra's statement. And secondly, we needed Mar Zutra's statement to talk about this latter case that we just studied, which is the case of where a guy is a moida b'miktsas, and the Eidim support him saying that he owes nothing. Their Rabbi Abba paskin that you have to still take a shvuah because you're a moida b'miktsas, and Marba Ravashi disagreed with him and said you don't have to take a shvuah at all because you're like a meishav aveda because you have witnesses supporting you. So that's why Mar Zutra says we paskin like Rabbi Abba. And this is where we'll hold it for today. Wish you a very meaningful and happy Yom. Yeah, Rabbi Chanan.